Hi everyone. Oscar-winning film director Martin Scorsese once said, "Movies touch our hearts and awaken our vision. They change the way we see things, they take us to other places, they open doors and minds. Movies are the memories of our lifetime and we need to keep them alive." While we have all seen films, whether in movie theaters or on streaming services, many of us are unaware of just how much films have changed throughout the years since they first debuted and what factors drive that change. In this speech, I will be looking at how film has evolved over the years. Now, since film is a very broad subject and I only have about 6 minutes to talk to you today, we will be looking at the evolution of film beginning in the early 1900s with the silent era and ending in the 1950s. We will also be looking at 3 specific points that contribute to film's evolution: popular genres, production and audience attendance rates, and camera work. Beginning in the silent era, which began in the early 1900s and lasted until the 1920s, although silent films were made with minimal budgets and limited resources, there was no shortage of creative diversity of the films being produced during this time. By the end of the 1920s, Hollywood was producing and releasing about 800 silent films a year. 3 of the most popular film genres during the silent era were drama, romance, and slapstick comedy. Since there wasn't any recorded dialogue, silent films relied heavily on visuals, such as stunts and exaggerated body language and facial expressions to tell their story. The silent era was revolutionary in pioneering various shots, angles, and editing techniques that are still being used by directors today. According to an article about silent films, they pioneered major fundamental elements such as jump cuts and dissolves, and editing techniques such as montages, cross-cutting, and parallel editing. All of these are still in use today. Moving into the 1930s, which is often referred to as the Golden Age of Hollywood, according to History.com, despite the economic times of the Great Depression, it is estimated that 80 million Americans went to the movies each week during the Depression. That is about 65% of the population going to the movies every week. Richard Burtz described the movie-going public in his work American Movie Audiences in the 1930s as working middle-class families who were hit the hardest by the Depression and seeking a way to escape the cruel hardships of the reality and venture into worlds where cares and fears are irrelevant. Some of the most popular genres that emerged during this time are musicals, horror with the introduction of the Universal monsters, melodramas, and gangster films. Films such as Gone with the Wind and Wizard of Oz were often labeled as escapists, allowing viewers to escape the real world. Moving into the 1940s, film reaches its height of popularity around 1946. Studios are producing about a total of 400 films a year, and about 90 million Americans are seeing them every week. Though due to the United States' involvement in World War II, funding was cut. According to History.com again, in 1942, World War Production Board initiated a max budget of $5,000 for new film pieces. This caused many studios to cut corners, recycle props, and find cheap ways to make films. After the war ended and going into the 1950s, film began to focus on targeting to teenagers and younger audiences with new and exciting symbols of rebellion, and thus we begin to see a rise in characters such as the anti-hero. But stricter production codes led to many studios having to rework films, because the code displayed showing taboo topics such as drugs and prostitution. And also with the rising popularity of television, we see a sharp decrease in theater attendance. A report from the U.S. Census Bureau showed that the number had dropped from 90 million in 1946 to 60 million in 1950. Some of the most iconic genres to come out of these times were film noir, musicals, comedies, and melodramas. And some of the most iconic shots and angles that come out of this are called reaction shots, low-key lighting, and montages. And Oscar-winning director Alfred Hitchcock would utilize most of these techniques to create the eerie suspense that is often associated with his films. Now, although we didn't make it to the present day, we were able to explore different genres, look at attendance rates, and identify different forms of camera work and see just how far film has come within a span of 50 years. And with the constant new innovations in camera work and digital effects, there's no telling what film will look like in 10, 15 years down the road. Thank you.